Love Lies Bleeding from Rose Glass. It's a thriller about a romance that draws a bodybuilder into a young woman's world of family struggles and crime. So this movie takes place in the 80s, where we follow Lou, played by Kristen Stewart. She works at a rundown gym where she meets Jackie, played by Katy O'Brien. The two of them become romantically involved despite the bad influence that they have on one another's lives, and after a series of intense encounters and bloody exchanges, Lou and Jackie go through several struggles, both in their relationship and with the people around them, as the result of Lou's father's life of crime. So this movie shows us a very complex relationship that arguably just shouldn't be. More than anything, I think this movie is about the pitfalls of infatuation. On Lou's side, she sees a drop of excitement that stirs up all the monotony and stress in her life. And for Jackie, she finds appreciation and acceptance from someone during this very hard journey while chasing her dreams. That all sounds lovely, right? But it's actually pretty complicated because they each make very reckless decisions capable of ruining their lives, all for somebody that they've known for such a short period of time. Of course, that all pertains to the film's central theme. The line between love and infatuation is often quite blurry, so their lack of better judgment isn't completely unheard of, especially when you discover what they've each been through. While most of us probably won't have a romantic experience even close to this in regards to its ramifications, I think it still serves as a good cautionary tale for how unhealthy attachment can blind us from the red flags that we really just want to pretend aren't really all that red. So there's a lot of tension in this movie. There's a little bit of a web of connections that characters like Jack unknowingly get tied into. And once characters start to make out those connections, it kind of just forces that same tension onto us. There's a big inciting incident that really stirs all of that up, and that's when the movie takes off and really starts to feel like a thriller, because before that, the movie felt tense, but I wouldn't really say that it felt thrilling. I think part of that was just because of a long first act, though. This is definitely one of those movies where the 3 acts felt similar in length, as opposed to the second act rightfully taking up the majority of the screen time. Things just felt a little bit aimless at times, leaving us wondering what exactly the movie's core focus was. Because there are 2 main characters here with 2 different stories. If we're being honest, it's mostly about Lou, but without the focus on Jack and her endeavors as a bodybuilder, I don't think the movie would be nearly as good. So while it does leave some questions looming over us for duration, I think that the movie's way of leaving us unsure of who our true MC was and leaving us with the task of determining who to root for was a really clever way to direct the film. This movie is really dark. Lou's dad, Lou Sr., played by Ed Harris, runs a crime operation. The underlying intensity of that is what really made that web of connections feel so unsettling. There's also a lot of struggles beyond the whole crime thing. There is some pretty heavy subject matter in this movie, including domestic violence and substance abuse, so bear that in mind. You know, the movie does have an R rating over top of it, but I feel that tropes like that are always worth mentioning because some people draw the line at those. So Kristen Stewart, I'll say, is pretty good, but a little bit of a mixed bag. There are times where her performance is great, and then other times where I'm kind of just left thinking, was that really the best take they could get out of her? Katy O'Brien, on the other hand, was fantastic. Her character has a lot going on. She's very strong and confident, but she's also very troubled and reckless. The performance she brings really shows us that Jackie isn't just a pretty face or a toned, edgy woman. On the surface, she's pretty enthusiastic, but underneath, she's got some serious issues, including pent-up rage that is fueled by seeing those she cares about suffer. And we get some pretty good performances from the supporting cast as well. Ed Harris was really intimidating. Anytime his character is on screen, you can really feel a certain intensity around his presence. I just wish they had directed those around him to be a bit more tense while around him. It seems like they wanted him to be like Bill from Kill Bill, but his presence just wasn't quite as esteemed or unsettling as it could have been. For better or worse, this movie is very unafraid to make the screen feel dirty. We occasionally get some very unappealing images on screen, including feces swirling down a toilet and food seeping down a trash can and somebody's mangled face. I can't help but think that a lot of viewers will actually be turned off by this because there were times where I was, but honestly, I really learned to appreciate that dirtier imagery because it really reinforces the idea that this movie isn't supposed to be pretty. It's supposed to be grimy and make us feel uneasy. This movie has some sex scenes in it, but they're not really too over the top. They're not dragged out like they are in Poor Things, and they're not fueled by shock value like they are in Saltburn. There are only a couple of them, and they are pretty brief. There's like one scene that is narratively erotic, but then it just chills out after that. They shouldn't be too triggering to viewers that are willing to watch an R-rated movie about romance. In addition to, and sometimes in congruence with the dirtier subject matter, this movie has a lot of really good visual metaphors. Some of them are very obviously metaphors. For example, there is one scene where somebody regurgitates something that you couldn't possibly consume. But other times we see visuals that pull this movie into the territory of utter absurdism. For example, the way that this movie ends is strange. I'm not gonna lie, I actually wasn't too crazy about the ending. It seems that it's just visually metaphorical because there are these visuals seeded throughout the movie that allude to this kind of weird ending, but I gotta be honest, I think it's just a little too absurd. And leading up to that ending, everything just felt a bit too convenient for our leads. There's this really long scene where Lou is trying to evade someone and does exactly that as if they were just nowhere to be found. The whole time, I'm just thinking, this is just far too easy. I know that probably all sounds really cryptic, but I assure you that I've said as much as I can about the ending without just outright spoiling it to you. So I was not in love with how some things played out, but I don't want that to diminish everything else because all things considered, it was still a really dark and exciting movie. Overall, it's a gripping and intense story that really paints a picture of how damaging love can be, even when it's not bad all the time. It's a pretty good movie. It's not one that I think people need to rush to the theater to go see, but if you're trying to watch something gritty and thrilling this weekend, then this is a good one. Can I just say that if you do go and see this movie, don't let it be an example of an exciting start to a wonderful relationship. I feel obligated to say this because movies like this have negatively influenced how millions of people think about romance by showing them horrible approaches to love actually working out. But that's not the world that we live in. As much as everybody wants to be able to tell their parents and their future kids about a crazy story or a meet cute that led to their marriage, that's probably not gonna be your story. So don't dismiss your girlfriend's family crime drama, and don't threaten your own life so that a girl will date you. And don't sit outside someone's house after they've set boundaries. None of that is actually romantic in the real world. But thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please consider giving it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Problemista.